Okay, finally getting to work on this thing after a shit show of a morning. Got here and Dad hadn't plowed the driveway out yet, and most of it was actually fairly clear from A, we had lake effect snow, so it all settled out, and B, the wind took care of most of it, but the damn hill out here still had about 6 inches of snow on it, so the forklift wasn't going to climb through it. So I go down, go to start the 1800. Been starting fine when the weather was warm. Apparently the batteries are they've finally given up the ghost. It had enough juice to run the manifold heater, and then it cranked over really slow. So alright, throw the battery charger on it. Finally got that thing started about 15 minutes later. Get it warmed up, get everything moved out of the way, because there were some trucks parked in the driveway, and get up on the tractor and go to hit the damn floor pedal to bring the column down. Floor pedal, or the pedal for the steering wheel lock, just goes right down and just kind of stays there on the floor. And so I was like, well, shit. So I look up under there with a flashlight. It snapped the draw bolt off that goes up to the plunger that locks the steering column. So the steering column was locked up. So like an hour later, jacking around, tearing that apart and fixing it, got that put back together, finally got the driveway cleared out, finally got the forklift up here so we can finally get that fuel tank out of there and fix that power steering line. Finally. So I've been here since 9:30 and it is now 12. Hell of a morning. But anyway, I have to pull the front strap off. I explained most of this already, but we'll give a refresher. Pull the front strap off, undo these hoses, undo the wires for the sending unit, undo the rear strap, and obviously unhook the fuel line. And I gotta nip the zip ties holding that light wire up. And then throw a big old, actually probably have to throw 2 straps around it to get all the way around it, pick it up with the forklift. And hopefully we can just leave it hanging from the forklift while we fix that hose, put the hose back in, drop the tank back in, put it all back together, wham bam, thank you Sam, we're done. In theory. So I'm gonna go ahead and, I mean, it ain't really worth showing all this stuff on camera. You undo the strap, you undo the hoses, and long story short, I will skip the boring part and we'll come back at you when we're ready to pull the tank. Okay, I think I got everything unhooked. I've already been over it twice just to make sure. The one thing that makes this difficult is these damn steering lines, which I took loose from the clamp. You gotta fidget with them to get them through. And then I took this line loose just to give us a little bit of wiggle room with the return port in the front of the tank, because you ain't got a whole lot of room to get this thing out of here. It's, like I said before, it's a bitch. It wasn't one of Oliver's better ideas, but I guess it worked at the time. So anyway, I guess we're ready to yank her out of there ever so gingerly. See, you get that out of there, it makes a big old hole to work in. It's a good thing we did this, because got it out, and this line has been rubbing on the brake linkage, and it's down to bare wire. And then this one is the one that I blew field cultivating last spring. And it's got that fix in it right there. But these hoses are the ones that have all the goofy steel ends crimped on them. But we think we got a possible solution to that. To make this a little easier now and in the future. So, yeah. And this also, I had initially hoped it was going to be a quick pull the hoses out, get everything fixed, put the hoses back in, put the tank back in, put it all back together. But, got a bare wire there. Probably ought to see about fixing that. I forgot I need a new shutoff cable because that one's getting, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it's got a grab in it. And I have no clue why. It's all you can do to pull it out. It's not, I've sprayed it full of WD-40. I've done everything I can do and nothing helps. There's something screwed up in there, so... And also, don't mind all this excessive oil. This is all from when that line blew, and you can only wash in there so good with that tank in there. So, anyway, first things first, I guess we got to get them lines pulled out of there. All right, show you what we got going on here. Actually, probably be easier for me to reach it from the other side. Actually, I need the... Where did it go? There it is. The visual aid. So, this used to be part of the hose assembly that went down in there, which goes to this, which is actually a fitting on a hose that comes down here, the priority valve, and this is the feed for the steering motor. So that comes up through here, up along the transmission to here where you got a joint. And then this would have originally been the fitting on the end of a hose that came up to here where it was crimped. And then that one continued on up to here where it would have been crimped onto here. And then this guy would have been a normal JIC, number 8 JIC here, came up and would have crimped onto this guy here, which was that big, another curly Q dork of a hose end. Well, the problem with these big curly Q dork of a hose ends is they can't fit in our crimper. And as long as Dad's been doing hydraulics and making hydraulic hoses, he does not know of a crimper that can crimp those ends on a hose pre-bent. The only thing we can figure is the AGCO, when they have them made, has them crimped on the hose as a straight piece of tube, and then once the hose assembly's made, they get bent. That's a bitch. So, well, what Dad did, and what we came up with and what Dad did was we whacked these fittings off the end of the hose, and then Dad silver brazed. Let me get this fitting out of the way for you. These are here for visualization purposes of where the hoses are going to lay. Male JIC braze on ends onto the tubes so that those just become a tube. They're an adapter tube. That's all they're doing. And before anybody says anything and just put regular hose ends on there, well, the way these hoses lay in here when the steering motor tilts with the column, these have to be on here like this. You can't just put a 90 on here and bring the hoses down. It won't work. There's a reason that those fittings are, or there's a reason that those tubes are bent like that. So basically all we did was turn what was originally fittings on a hose into adapters. And then the hoses themselves are just going to be a normal hose assembly with JIC on both ends. So, which the same thing down here. This is actually obviously an entirely new tube that's Dad made taller so that it's the same height as this, so that for all intents and purposes, even though this is a 1/2 inch hose and this is a 3/8 hose, in theory they should both be the exact same length up to the steering motor. So if these ever fail again, you'll be able to get them out of the tractor without pulling the fuel tank, because this hose you might have been able to sneak out of there because it was a straight on this end. So we probably could have got it loose and got it snuck up through here somehow. This one ain't no way, because it had that big 90 down here at the bottom that wouldn't let it come straight up, and it had this big dork of a curlicue that wouldn't let it go down. So there was no physical way to get this hose out of here with the original ends on it without pulling the tank. Now you just got straights on both ends, so you pull the side covers off the dash, you get both hose ends loose, which these you should be able to reach right around this corner and get. And these you can get if you pull this cover and this cover, this one will just come loose because there's shit attached back here. But in theory, you pull this and this off, you can get up here with wrenches, because you will still, this fitting you can get without removing the curlicue, but this one is buried down in here under this fitting and in between the steering motor and the bracket. You can't get wrenches on there without taking the line loose, but it's still better than what they had before. So the snag we ran into is Dad doesn't have the right hose, so we can't do the hose assemblies till Monday when Dad gets the right hose. So that's where we're sitting right now, is that. But I got the fuel tank soaked in Simple Green, and I'm going to wash it down so it's not so slimy going back in. And I'm definitely, before I put the hood and sheet metal back on, since it needs power wash anyway, from the oil and everything getting over it from taking the hoses and stuff off, I'm going to back this thing out of the garage next week before I put the sheet metal back on and power wash it. Then put the sheet metal back on and probably power wash it one more time, because she's kind of scuzzy now and covered in oil again and diesel, and that annoys me. So yeah, this is now junk. So anyway, I guess that's where things stand for tonight. Obviously can't go any further, and we're not really going to be able to do anything tomorrow. Might possibly dink with the hood tomorrow and try to fix that corner that's broke. Actually, both corners have been fixed, so you gotta fix both corners. But anyhow, I guess we will catch you guys the next time I'm tinkering with this. All right, well, while we're waiting on all the rest of the peripheral parts for this thing, I figured I'd attack the hood. Unfortunately, well, I guess I shouldn't say unfortunately, I'm not going to go through and blast the hood and paint it and all that bullcrap this year. We got other projects that need done, and that's gonna turn into an entirely different deal, because as you can tell, when whoever painted this thing the first time did it, they literally laid masking tape down this flange, and you can see new paint right there, original paint right there, and the whole underside is original paint. They did a very piss poor job of prepping it, and the side panels are just as bad. They're new paint on the outside, original paint on the inside. The clover white flares on the bottom are starting to bleed rust. So basically what's going to happen is, I think next winter all the tin's going to come off of this, and I'm going to get a better paint match on it, and all the tin on this is going to get repainted, and it's going to get re-decaled. Might even redo the grill because it's getting chipped. Actually, this is from the time that I dropped it. We won't talk about that. Long story short, these are one tough son of a bitch because it fell, hit the ground right here, and didn't break. So, you can't break an Oliver grill. I'm pretty sure it's impossible. But anyway, what we got to do is fix these front corners because they obviously weren't peeled back like this when it was on the tractor. That was my way of exploring to figure out how in the holy hell they had this attached to the hood because I can't find any weld beads. But I got to get these off, and they just piled Bondo in these corners trying to fix what they fucked up. And Bondo is body filler, not body maker. You're not supposed to pile it on. You're supposed to fill the low spots with it and sand it off. And when you're done sanding, the only body filler should be in the pits. I don't think they recommend having it more than like a 30-second thick or something. It's not supposed to be that thick. Because, you know what happens when you put it on that thick? It chips and flakes like that because it can't take vibration. Stupid people. So, anyway, got to get them corners fixed, and then I didn't actually realize it, but this gusset is broke. So, it's actually, part of it is still hanging on the hood right there, and then this side is bent. So I think what I'm going to do is pop the spot welds, cut it out, get it cleaned up, probably cut a piece of steel, or a piece of flat strap, to lay across the back of these tabs to strengthen them and weld that back in. And I'm trying to figure out, because it almost appears like the bow itself was never actually welded to the top of the hood. It just looks like it was welded on the flanges. Well, that was annoying. So, I don't know if I should take it and weld it into the top of the hood or just weld it back in, because there is no evidence that it was ever welded to the top of that hood. None whatsoever. So, unless I get it out and there's evidence, I mean, I can't even feel spot weld marks down. I don't think it was ever welded to the top of that hood, so I don't know if I should. I don't know if they left it that way so that the hood could flex, which would be my guess. But I think I might just weld it back in like they had it, with a little bit of strengthening done to it so that it doesn't break again. Because it was obviously, I don't know, odd. But unless I physically find evidence that they had this welded to the top of the hood, I'm not going to do it, because I'm sure if they didn't do it, it was not done that way for a reason. And my guess would be to allow the hood to flex with the tractor without breaking. But anyway, in my experiments to see how they had this attached, I pretty much determined that the easiest thing to do is just going to be to cut the corner out, which is going to have to happen anyway to fix it. Because I do not know how they have these attached. Don't really care to find out. I'm just going to cut it out and get rid of it. And then we have this old junk-ass 77 hood that I can't remember if we had that given to us or if Dad got it dirt cheap off eBay because it was all fucked up. I mean, damn thing looks like it's been through a tornado. This side's all bent up and wrinkled. And anyway, that's been around for years, and we cut patches out of it. And it just so happens that that's same gauge sheet metal as that, so that's a good place to get patches. So anyhow, I guess we'll go for broke and cut them corners out, because once we're there, we're past the point of no return. Well, once I cut this out, there ain't no going back. Also, I think now would be the appropriate time to turn the air compressor back on. They laid that that Bondo in there so thick, it's ridiculous. It's clear back into here. The deed is done. Well, that was ridiculous. I had to grind all the way down to here and all the way back to here on both sides to get rid of that Bondo. All the damage was done right up here, and they had to pull that stuff clear back here to make it or to hide it enough that you couldn't see it, which you could still see it, but so anyhow, I guess first step is going to be to cut patches, and I'll get them laid in and welded and cleaned up. Then I'm going to go down on the 1950 and measure out where the holes are supposed to be and punch the holes in once the patches are in, because they should be located in the same spot. Because for all intents and purposes, the actual stamp of a 1950T and a 1955 hood are pretty close to the same, at least the profiles and everything. Obviously a 55 has the door in it for the air cleaner, and it doesn't have the holes in the hood for the dual air cleaner, but the basic profile is pretty close, so that should mean the holes go in the same spot. But do some measuring, cut some patches out, go from there. Alright, I got my patches cut. This one, I don't know how the hell I did it, but it's perfect. That one matches both body lines. This one is perfect. I laid a piece of flat stock right here to follow this body line up. It is dead nuts on. I don't know how I'd managed to do that. And this side matches the top line perfect. But when I get it welded in, I'm going to have to come in and shave some of this corner off right here, because it's a little long on top, but I don't want to go cutting on that till I get it welded in and know exactly how much I got to take off. And actually, it's just a little sliver. I'll take the little air grinder and scuff that corner off and keep checking it till it's right. But all in all, I don't know how I could have got that any better even if I was trying hard. I don't think I could have done them two any better. Okay, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to try to TIG this in here. And it's going to be interesting because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I can't TIG for shit. But I got that thing held on there with a piece of duct tape because I couldn't get a clamp to hold it right. And we don't have a magnet small enough to hold it right. So I figure if I can get it down here in this corner and here in this corner and then work it where I need it to be, because there should be a little bit of an arc in it to match the body line. Although it is pretty damn close looking at it from this angle. But get it welded down here at least. And then probably going to have to massage it to make it fit right through here. Well, Cousin Dick just came over and that turned into a 3-hour bullshit session. So here we are a little while later. So I'm going to go in and tack this thing without any filler rod. Just kind of melt the two pieces together a little bit to get it stuck, and then I'll come in with some filler rod in theory. Like I say, this is not my thing. And if I can't do it, I'll have Dad come out and do it because I need this to look half-ass decent. Can't see my damn line through the helmet. Oh, that's why. That's a little better. I really need to get some new lenses for this thing. They're getting kind of scuzzy. One little tack. And my duct tape's all nice and melty, so the rest of that ought to burn off as I'm welding it, hopefully. Shit, too far. Not wanting to move, and moving real easy. A little tap right there. Damn it. That's a little thinner out there that is not wanting to work. That might need some filler rods. So they got the actual hood side is kind of thin. That's gonna need some rod, but if I come right here on this corner, I'm even. If I can get it there and there, it should stay pretty stable. Come on, damn you. There we got her. Okay. So, I got two really small tacks on there, which is giving me. Now I can actually move the hood and get it where I'm not welding straight up and down, because that kind of sucks. Well, unfortunately, the easiest thing to do is just lean it up against the bench on the floor, so the work height kind of sucks, but I don't really know what else to do with it that won't scratch the ever-living hell out of the paint. Not that the paint's that great anyway, but we want to save what we can for now. So bear with me, because A, this is not a very good working position, and B, I suck at TIGging, so we'll see what kind of mess we can make here. So far, a pretty good one. Well, there's one corner done. It would probably, well, when I finally actually go through and repaint the hood, it's probably going to need a little body filler. It's actually still a little bit of a high spot right there. I don't know. Probably just going to paint it for now. But when I actually go through and do the hood right, these corners are probably have to get a little bit of body filler, because obviously you can't get it 100% perfect. But I mean, you can't really it's pretty damn good if I do say so myself. It took me a lot of welding around to get it there, but TIGging ain't my thing and bodywork ain't my thing, and this is stressful and I don't like it. And then on the back, I didn't get too carried. I ground it off flat, but I didn't get too carried away because you don't want to get some of your strength is in that weld pool, and you don't want to grind it off flush with the sheet metal, because then all you have is whatever weld ended up in the seam between the two. So, but that's on the inside. It doesn't need to look pretty. It just needs to be strong. And when I was doing that, this spot weld here for this gusset popped the rest of the way, which I kind of suspected because it had pulled part way, or it was part way separated when I took the hood off. And I think this side is, well, this side's still fine. This side's gonna need fixed though, but that'll be easy. Just pry it apart the best you can, get that ground off, or get that cleaned up. And it comes down far enough, take a unibit and make that hole a little bit bigger, and then just take the MIG welder and buzz the hole shut and grind it off and paint it for now. Like I say, this hood's gonna get probably more work done to it next year. But I'm gonna quit screwing with this side before I make a mess of it again, and get the other side done. Alright, I figured out a spot or a way to set this thing that's a little bit more convenient, although not perfect, for me to weld on it, but now I can't get a good camera angle on it, so bear with me here. I'm doing what I can. I am too shaky for this shit. I am way too shaky for this shit. Well, this side went even better than the other side. I got this side all put together in one shot. The other side I had to weld it 3 times. But there was a hole that opened up that looked like an old spot weld or something that kept throwing fits. So that I struggled on it. But this side I welded one bead on the back, one bead on the front, tapped the body line back into it, and hell, that looks pretty damn good. This side's gonna need a little body filler eventually too, but unless you walk right up to the tractor and look, I doubt you'd ever notice it the way it is, because that paint goes on kind of thick to begin with. But I mean, obviously you're gonna notice it because there's gonna be a paint line right here where the color gets a little lighter. But we will fix that next year when we do everything. So I guess the next thing to do, actually, yeah, I'll fix that first and then put the holes in the front and then tackle that gusset. So day 2 of body work. Took the old spot weld cutter and got the bow out of the center of the hood. This was the side where it was broke completely out, and it was just the tab. That tab that I welded back on was welded here, and the rest of the bow was back here just doing its own thing. That side was still fixed, but this was all twisted. So 2 things I noticed. Firstly, they got a tab with 2 sides on here, and for some reason it was only spot welded on one side on both sides. Kind of defeats the purpose. And the second thing is, I have looked all over. There is no evidence whatsoever that the bow itself was actually welded into the top of the hood. My guess is the reasoning behind it is they didn't. Sheet metal is not something you want to be 100% rigid on a tractor, because despite the fact that that's got a big old cast iron tub and everything on it's iron, the sheet metal will still flex a little bit. The dash is going to flex, the grill is going to move a little bit, the air cleaner is going to wiggle. The hood has to be able to move a little bit. And if you went in here and welded this bow into the top of this hood, this thing would become so rigid that it would basically tear itself apart, because the only place it would have to move is all the bolt holes. That being said, like these front holes, it's very common for these to break out on the 4-digit hoods. Not because it's an inherent weak point, because guys won't keep the rod tight that holds the front of the hood on, and it'll let the hood rock up here and it busts those holes out. So as long as you keep the bolt tight up front, that doesn't, or the rod tight, that doesn't happen. But anyhow, what I'm gonna do is come back here and punch a second hole in the hood so that I can plug weld on both sides of that tab so that it's actually in there right. And I'm gonna take and get a piece of flat stock and cut this profile out of it up to here, or basically cut a T out of it, and weld that on top of here, because this obviously goes in there like this, and you got plenty of room in here to make that a little thicker. If this hadn't have been broke, I probably wouldn't worry about it, but basically I'm reinforcing that weld because that material doesn't have a lot of cross section and it could break again. So I'm gonna do that, and then all you gotta do is weld it back in, do a little bit of finish sanding, and shoot some spray paint on it for now, and we'll worry about actual major body work next year probably. And a little while later, I got my second hole punched in both sides, cleaned up the spot where that bow was going to lay in, and shot some primer in it so there's paint underneath it. Not going to worry about shooting it green, because when the hood gets done right next year, we'll blast the whole thing and reprime it and repaint it. But when you blast it, you're obviously not going to get in between the bow and the hood, so you just want something in there to keep rust from bleeding when it's actually painted right. So there's going to be primer there, and then when I get done working on the bow, I'll clean it up and paint it, or shoot some primer on it too. But I got my little T's made. Obviously I got 3 holes so I can plug weld it to the original tab, and then I'm going to run a bead right there. When you're doing this, despite the fact that you're welding sheet metal, you want your welder turned up fairly hot. As I should say, you want it turned up hot as long as you don't have to worry about blowing through the sheet metal. This is obviously going to be sitting on a flat surface, so you're going to have a heat sink underneath it, and you got something to back the sheet metal up. If it was lighter, or if you couldn't back it up with anything, you don't want to be so hot that you blow through it, obviously. But since we don't have to worry about that, you want it fairly hot, because that's not a very big hole to work with, and it's going to, your weld puddle is going to fill it real quick, so you want to make sure you get good penetration into that sheet metal before you fill the hole, because you got one shot to do this and one shot only. So yeah, gonna plug weld both of those on there, and then clean it up, shoot some primer on it, and it can go back in. Put a tack there so it doesn't pop up on me. You have to turn the welder down for that, because obviously there's nothing backing it up. You don't want to blow through. And let's go. Now do about there. How about that? All right, I think we're ready to rock and roll. So that's what it ended up looking like all finished. Just a little bit of a tacky spot there in that primer. Something about like that. Well, I go ahead and really clamp that side, get it where it needs to be. And then jockey this side around, so I made a mark where I took it out. And clamp that side, make sure everything's kind of where it should be. And weld her in. Well, after a little tweaking to make it fit the way I kind of wanted it to, I'm kind of at the point of no return. You got to put it back in. So I guess nothing to it but to do it. Look at that, didn't even burn any paint off the outside. Not too bad. For my first actual real attempt at what I guess you'd call actual legit body work, I'm satisfied with that. Like I say, a little bit of body filler on that would go a long way, but until I actually go through and do the hood right there, it ain't no sense in putting a bunch of body filler in there to sandblast it back off a year later. And the paint even, you know, on camera it looks almost identical. In person it's got a little bit, it looks a little bit more John Deere-y. But I'm going to have to do a little bit of wet sanding anyhow, because there's a little puddle line right where I had the masking tape. So I think if I wet sand really, just really quick buff wet sand it to knock that ridge off and blend it a little bit, and I hit it with some wax to kind of blend we got some deoxidizing wax that cuts a little bit, kind of wax it a little bit and kind of blend them colors together right there so that it's not a sharp one-to-one color change. And I think you could blend it in good enough. This side's got a couple, there's a hole there, and there where there's a little bubble from the weld. But like I say, that'll all get taken care of when you go through and do your body filler and everything and do it right. And that cross member doesn't really matter. You ain't gonna see that when it's on the tractor. And while I was waiting on that paint to dry, I got the new cable put in, or new shutoff cable put in. The one that I took out, the reason that it was sticking every once in a while, it had been rubbing right here. And I couldn't figure out why the hell it was sticking, because it was a jacketed cable. It wasn't like just a regular spiral choke cable. It was rubber jacketed like this one. It's like, it shouldn't be fucking rusted. Well, it had wore through the jacket right there and started to wear into the wire, and I'm guessing it had rusted right there and probably started to collapse the casing. So in order to prevent this one from doing that, I'm routing it. I went in the operator's manual and found a picture of this area to see how they routed it, and I got it routed the way it's supposed to go now, and I put some fuel hose over it in this area where it's going to be rubbing on shit the most to help protect it. And as a side effect of all that, while I was looking in the manual, I found a picture of this area, and apparently on the later tractors, they took this tube and shortened it to about this height and stuffed the hose up behind the dash to get to here instead of having them both go up over. Well, shit, with a little bit of tweaking with a screwdriver and swapping that straight out for a 45, I was able to do the same thing here. And with the hose Dad's getting, as flexible as it is, hopefully that's going to be a better option than the way we were originally going to do it. So, yeah, now just waiting on Dad to get here with some hose. Okay, so here's what we got so far. I got my hoses made. Well, they're not crimped. I just got them test fit for length, but they're pretty much ready to crimp. When this one's all tight and everything's right, it's going to be pooched up about like that, so it's clear of everything. There's a ring clamp going to go right here on the hole where the original clamp was. And then the one on the bottom, the return line, because this is the feed, and then the 1/2 inch is the return. And I had a 45 in there, and I got the hose made, and I'm looking at it, it's like, well, shit, I got enough room. I can get a long drop 90 in there and clean it up even more. So a little bit more tweaking on that tube to push it back toward the dash further. And I got a long drop in there. I think I might take like another 1/2 inch out of that hose, because it's got a little bit, it could stand to lose just a little bit. And then probably going to, because obviously you don't want that hose pushing on that tube, because the only thing holding that tube is the fitting back there in the hydraulic reservoir. Gonna come in here in the dash, and hopefully we got a ring clamp that'll get a hold of the tube right here, and put a, probably gonna have to, because this is gonna turn about like so. It's gonna be, when everything's tight, it's gonna be running parallel with the dash. So put a ring clamp on it and probably take a piece of pipe and make a little spacer to hold it back. But yeah, and then put some spiral wrap on it to protect it from scuffing, and we'll be good to go. And after a little bit of work, this is what we end up with. Before, they had both lines running right up through here with a double clamp like that. That was actually the front and the back of it. I guess I don't know if that was right or not. When we did those lines the first time, we put them back in there the way they were, and that's the way they were, but this is a whole lot better. This one's clamped there. It doesn't get close to, the closest it gets to anything is it gets kind of close to this line, this steering line, but it doesn't, nothing even comes close to touching. And then that guy there doesn't, it's completely clear of everything. Got that drilled and tapped and put that ring clamp on there. That guy right there, so that you're not yanking on the steel line when you're moving the steering motor. And everything else just kind of goes like it belonged that way the whole time. So that worked out pretty good. I'm glad I saw that picture in the book. Glad I had to figure out where they ran this shutoff cable, because if I'd have never went and looked for that, I'd have never seen that that line could go that way. So anyhow, I think real quick I'm gonna have Dad help me get the tank set in tonight, and that way tomorrow I could do everything else on my own, because that's really the last thing that I need some help on, is getting that set back in. And we will go from there. So we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Well, we fast forwarded a little bit, but the vast majority of the work I had left to do was just the monotonous undoing of everything that I did to get it apart. So it was pretty self-explanatory and didn't warrant too much video time, since this last one was getting longer than it needed to be already. I was really happy with how that hood turned out. You gotta get right up on it to see the paint line, and it's gonna need a little bit of body filler in it when we go to do it right, but for just welding it and grinding it off smooth, I am really happy with how this hood turned out. It's got a couple little doinks right there, but she'll do for a workhorse for now. And like I say, all the tin needs done on it, so because there's some scratches in it, and that decal fucking runs downhill, and the spears are, you know, like I say, it's bleeding rust right here, and everything needs straightened out so the body lines fit right. It's pretty good. The other side's fine. This side's a little jacked up, but we'll get her there a little at a time. I had to reset the toe in because it was an inch. After I got everything in, got it all tight, it was towed in an inch in the front. So I had to get the toe set right. I retightened the ball joints on the steering arm, or the main pitman arm. Took me probably better part of an hour. I timed it. It took me an hour and a half. I spent a lot of time getting the tin to fit right, now that the hood actually goes on like it's supposed to. And all around, I just think she's a lot better for it. The one thing I didn't do yet was bend these washers over, because I want to get a little bit of drive time on it, let everything work itself in, retighten those spindle nuts, and then we'll go ahead and lock it all down, and then probably run it through the spring and recheck the wheel bearings in it. So anyhow, I guess, as many of you know, I was called out by Lord Muck, so we'll probably be doing that in the next video. So that's it for this one. We'll catch y'all on the next one.